Holy Spirit, history and background.
During the Old Testament times, the Holy Spirit came upon only a few people, and it was only for a season or a specific task, and once that task was done, the Holy Spirit left. This way of receiving and living with the Holy Spirit was called endowment. Moses was filled with the Holy Spirit when he led God's people out of Egypt and into the Promised Land. The miracles he performed and the life he led has no parallel in the Old Testament. So the Lord said to Moses, "Take Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him." Numbers 27:18. Joshua had the Holy Spirit when he led his army to overcome the great city of Jericho. He led the armies of Israel to take possession of the Promised Land and later divided it fairly among the tribes of Israel. He was one of the most successful commander and leaders of Israel. The King David was blessed with the Holy Spirit. He is considered to be among the greatest kings to ever have ruled. He was a brilliant commander, a fair judge, and a distinguished poet. He is credited to have organized worship services like no other, and even today about half the Psalms in the book of Psalms are credited to him. The Holy Spirit was with Daniel and with Joseph, the son of Jacob, both of whom rose to powerful positions and were prominent figures in their time. With a careful study of the Old Testament, you will be able to recognize and appreciate the work of the Holy Spirit across the books. Once Jesus came along, he made one of the greatest promises that was ever made by God to mankind. He said that once he goes back to be with God, he will bless his followers with the gift of the Holy Spirit. This time, the Holy Spirit will be inside us and not leave us till the end, when the soul of the person reaches heaven.
Biblical inspiration.
This is the story of Moses. He was born an Israelite but raised as a prince in Egypt. When he saw an Egyptian harassing one of his people, he lost control and killed the man. He fled to the wilderness, fearing the Pharaoh's wrath, and forgot about both the Egyptians and the Israelites for 40 years. God, however, had a different plan for his life. He chose Moses, who was trained with the Egyptian leadership and who knew how to survive the wilderness, to lead his chosen people out of Egypt and into the Promised Land. God blessed Moses with the Holy Spirit. Moses went on to perform great signs, wonders, and miracles. In the end, he managed to convince the Pharaoh to let his people go. Nowhere else in the Bible are such wonders seen on the same scale again. After Moses succeeded in freeing his people, he then went on to lead about 1 million people across a desert with virtually no resources on a journey that spanned about 40 years. Moses was a man with whom God spoke face to face with. He is known to have pleaded with God and interceded for his people. He even argued with God once and convinced him to calm down. Moses was a man who was willing to forsake his own salvation so that his people may not face the judgment of God. The Bible itself says there was no other man like him since. It is true that there was nobody else like Moses, who knew God almost like a friend, until Jesus came along. The good news for us is that the same Holy Spirit that led both Moses and Jesus is now living inside us and guides us.
Life application. Study the Old Testament carefully and observe the work of the Holy Spirit before the time of Jesus. Appreciate that the same Spirit of God who was with the prophets, who forged nations and altered the course of human history, now dwells within you.